Welcome everyone for another Apitherapy video. This time finally we'll be talking about propolis. It's actually the most medicinal substance from the beehive. It's really something, for me, it's one of the main reasons why apitherapy does exist. It's a wonderful product. So what is it? Why the bees are harvesting propolis? Like, what do they do with it? All this. Let's just start by answering those questions. So the bees, they go on trees, some specific trees, mainly poplar trees, but also depending where they live and what part of the world they are, they might sometimes, of course, choose other type of trees. But basically what they'll be looking for is some kind of resin or exudate coming from usually young buds or buds of trees. Sometimes it's also the resin coming right off the sap of the tree. This from like the trunk, if there's some little if the tree's been hurt a little bit, it's open wound, let's say, for the tree, and then there's some sap coming out and resin, like resiny sap, let's say. Then they can sometimes use this as well, depending where they are. But usually they will prefer the resin from poplar buds. That's in most part of the world, but not everywhere, of course. So poplar tree propolis is the most common. So the bees will harvest that resin, and then they go back to the beehive and they add to it a little bit of their saliva, of course, but mainly some wax, some beeswax. And the beeswax helps they mix it with the resin of the trees, and it gives it an easier texture to work with, because straight resin from trees is extremely sticky. Sometimes you see the bees coming back from getting a load of resin from the trees, and they just arrive in the beehive, and you see them, they try to unload, and you see the other bees helping them, and it's just super sticky, and they're having a hard time sometimes dealing with it. So it's not an easy thing. The bees do this, but it's not easy at all. It's something extremely sticky. It's sometimes a little bit hard. It's not an easy job. So they do it for a very specific purpose. And they use this substance specifically. They choose that. You know that bees arrived on Earth at the same time as flower plants that have flowers appeared on Earth. They came together. Actually, they came about 90 million years ago. That's what we think for now, because that's the oldest bee we found, was 90 million years ago. So that's a really long time. So they're here since a really long time. And since that time, they keep harvesting that resin from the trees and making that propolis. Once they have it, what do they do with it? They actually cover the entire surface of the beehive with it inside. They will just, very often the bees in nature, they will do their nest, their hive, inside a hollow tree, for example, and because they have to protect from sunlight, because sunlight will actually melt down the wax, the beeswax, and that's their home. The babies are in there, the food is in there, it cannot melt like this. They have to maintain a specific temperature. So they will go in a space that is kind of insulated. So very often they will choose hollow trees. And inside that hollow tree, right around it, they will surround the hive with a thin layer of propolis that they made. Why do they do this? And then sometimes also they will cover even those cells in the beehive, there will be some propolis in it because it cleans it. Actually, propolis, that resin, is filled with what we call polyphenols, which are, most of them are very antibacterial, antimicrobial, antiviruses. It's protecting against so many different pathogens. It's just amazing. It's basically their immune system of the beehive. So they harvest that resin, they make it into propolis, so it's more easy to work with, and then they actually put it pretty much all around the beehive, and that protects them. So that's what propolis is for bees. And something very interesting to know, Beekeepers in, let's say, occidental part of the world, but probably in other parts as well. I'm not so sure. I don't know everything about beekeeping, but they have a tendency to choose to select bees that are actually producing less propolis. This could be shocking for someone that just heard that it's actually their immune system, that propolis, that it's a really big part of their immune system. Well, actually, that's what they do. Why? Because propolis is very sticky. So beekeepers don't like bees that have so much propolis because it's so long then to pull the frames out and look at the bees and do their job. So they select bees that make less propolis. So they're actually creating breeds of bees that have a weak immune system. So no wonder now that bees have so many troubles. I'm not saying that it's the main cause. The main cause is most probably pesticides, a mix of all different pesticides. That's a really bad thing happening to the bees. And then, of course, all the different parasites like varroa mites and so on, and all those different things. So it's not the main cause of the decline of bees, but it certainly is one of them. There's one professor at the University of Minnesota in the States that she's been doing some study adding some propolis to a beehive by painting sometimes the walls, and she's doing a different type of experiments, but basically adding up more propolis to a beehive and see if there's the difference for that beehive. Is it, strong? Is it more able to sustain heavier loads of parasites and different things? And the results are very interesting. It's not strong enough to be, that everybody will be talking only about that yet, but it's very promising, and it makes a lot of sense, because why are the bees harvesting that propolis? To seal things all around, to create that that propolis that then they can seal everything. There's another advantage to propolis. It's very sticky, but in the meantime it will also be quite firm, so it's a real barrier for parasites and stuff like that. It's a real protection because it's physically it creates a barrier, but also like chemically, the composition, all those polyphenols in the propolis are actually neutralizing so many bacteria, microbes, viruses, molds, and so on. So it's really amazing what they created with that immune system that is not only physical but also chemical. It's just wonderful. So the bees know so well their plants. They harvest the exact perfect resin that has the most polyphenols, the most active substance they can find in nature. They harvest exactly that, but it is not poisonous at the same time. So they harvest exactly that, and they bring it back to the beehive, and they make that their own immune system with it. This is just amazing. And depending where they are in the world, they will choose different type of plants. I told you about poplar trees, the resin from poplar trees, but in some areas, for example in Brazil, there's one plant called Baccharis, and that plant actually the very young leaves will have an exudate that is very high in polyphenol, and it's greenish instead of brownish. And then they harvest this exudate and they add it with wax, and they create that different type of propolis, which is green, but it's also propolis from the bees, and it just has the exact same functions as the poplar tree propolis. So it has slightly different aspect, less sticky, a little more solid, but it's also very powerful. Now, there's different types. Again, there's a few different type of propolis in the whole world. So for that green propolis from the Baccharis type of plant, one really interesting fact is bees are harvesting this for their own health, own immune system. It was before the immune system of the plants where they took it, because the plants, they create that exudate or that resin for a certain purpose. And that purpose is to protect themselves against pathogens. Same thing. It's their own immune system, because young leaves and buds are so tender. So many bacteria, microbes, fungals, fungi, and even little parasites would like to eat those leaves, of course. So they have to protect them. And that's how they do it. They create that exudate, they create that resin to protect those young buds that are so tender, you know. And so it was the immune system of the plants. Then the bees harvested, they make their own immune system with it. And now what? And now beekeepers can do just the same. We can harvest some from the bees, and there's really good ways to do it, very environmentally eco-friendly ways to do that. Don't worry about this. There are good ways to do it. And then beekeepers can harvest some and help the own immune system of people, of humans. So it's a whole chain of working in respect. So the bees work in respect with the plants. While they do this, they destroy nothing. They don't even destroy a leaf, nothing. They harvest some of it. It's nothing bad for the plants. And then the beekeepers do the same with the bees, respecting the bees, not harming the bees at all. They harvest some propolis, and it's a chain in life where we're all sustaining each other's immune system. So it's a sharing of that strong energy of those polyphenols that the plants are pulling up and making from what they receive from the sun, the earth, the water and air. So they make those polyphenols, and then it's a whole living chain of sustaining immune system of all that living chain. So this is just wonderful. And then so we can use it as well, human beings. That green propolis from Baccharis plants, about 80% of it is imported in Japan. And over there, they use it as anti-cancer. And it's in their pharmacopoeia, officially. It's just wonderful what they can do with it. Now, I'm not saying that propolis is anti-cancer because first, I cannot say it legally, so I cannot say that. But I'm saying that in Japan, they're doing it. So here in Canada, it's not official at all. I couldn't say that at all. It's totally impossible. But I'm just saying some countries are actually seeing things that way. Now, I don't know Japan that well. I don't know if their ethic is that good. If their medicine is good or not. I don't know them that well. But I know that they do this. So it's interesting to see that propolis, some people know it. They know propolis tincture. For example, we take it a few drops orally when there's a cough or a flu around, just to protect ourselves, because we know it's antimicrobial, antibacterial, and so on. So, and it's very efficient. There's also a propolis spray, throat spray that we can use that are all very good. And this is amazing that we know this, but there's other applications because it's sustaining the entire immune system. So there's a lot of applications which we don't know of yet, but we will find them soon. Why? Because you probably heard about the antibioresistance. So there's a resistance that is happening towards antibiotics, and propolis might be an answer to that, because propolis doesn't always have the same composition, because year after year the plants, they make a different resin, slightly different. The composition of polyphenols will change. Why? Conditions are changing. Different amount of water, different amount of sunshine, the earth around them, the dirt is not always rich the same way, and so it always varies year after year. So it's way more difficult to build a resistance to something that first have so many different components. Propolis has about 200 to 400 different active ingredients. So there's a great variety of action happening there. So that's one thing. But also the concentration and the presence of those polyphenols, those active ingredients, is actually also fluctuating. So it's very difficult to develop a resistance to this because it's changing all the time. It's not like one antibiotic, it's only this, and you take only that. And that, of course, it's kind of easy to develop some kind of resistance to this. But towards propolis, which is slightly changing year after year, it's more difficult. So propolis is just amazing, and the applications of it will grow with time. Year after year, there are more and more studies coming out about propolis, how to use it for this or this or that. It's actually very used now to also for just like they do in the beehive. they put propolis all around in the beehive, but that propolis, those polyphenols, a lot of them are volatile. So as there's some warmth happening, a lot of those active ingredients, substances, will actually fill the air of the beehive. So now not only it creates an envelope of propolis that protects the beehive from having any like alien pathogens, intruders coming in the hive, but also if there are any, because the bees are flying in and out of the beehive, they could bring some, on them, on their hair. Could do this. So sometimes probably it does happen, but the propolis also emanates, like those volatile particles from propolis are going in the air, and that actually sanitizes the air of a beehive. So that's where there's less mold happening in a beehive, less bacteria presence, microbes, and so on, because the air of a beehive is filled with the active components of propolis. So it's just amazing. So that principle for me is one of the most interesting thing of all, how we can actually protect ourselves naturally without having to form some harsh product on our health, and just aiming for natural medicine that doesn't even hurt a plant. We didn't even destroy a leaf making that medicine, having that propolis. We destroyed nothing. It's super harmonious. It's extremely natural. It's so beautiful how it's happening. And then we have that very efficient medicine that the bees spotted a long time ago, about 90 million years ago. They found out, ooh, this is the most efficient thing we can use to sustain our own immune system. So if we see it in the beehive, it means it's just really, really good. And the more and more studies coming out, the more we start realizing, whoa, propolis is really something. We should work more with it. So in the coming years, you'll see, of course, more and more products using propolis. And it's something extremely important. Now, as I usually do, of course, we could talk about all the different usage of propolis that exist already. But that would take more time. We will do it in other videos. For today, I just wanted to present you what is propolis, what its main activity. And now, as I usually do, I just want to present you a different perspective that brings that inspiration, that spark, that inner spark that we need to, to keep pushing, to keep working and developing products harmoniously without stealing from the bees, without stealing from the people, doing it nicely, organically, for real, and respectfully. So that spark for me with propolis, the idea that inspires me the most with propolis is that propolis is just a mirror. It's reflecting our aura. What is our aura? How does it work? Our own aura. You heard about aura, it's something, some kind of a glow or some colors or something around us. But what does it do basically? It creates an envelope, just like skin, but invisible, around us that creates some kind of separation, that it kind of creates the limits of where we are developing our living space, just that bubble around us. And it's that limit, and that's our aura. And sometimes it's going to be bigger, sometimes it's going to be smaller, sometimes it's going to be very, very clear, strong light, like strong intensity in it. People will feel it really strong. It does vary a lot, depending on people to people, but also in our own lifetime, it will change a lot. Sometimes there's many holes in it, and we see it's not very strong. The person doesn't have a strong aura. It's even an expression saying, oh, that person has a really strong aura. It's also an expression, without having to go into a very spiritual vision of this whole thing. So propolis acts just like that. It generates that envelope around the beehive where the bees is actually having its own life, its own space, living space. So that's that envelope. And what does it do also? There's volatile ingredients, particles and propolis, and it fills the air inside. So that's what our aura does. It's an envelope, but inside that envelope, it's filled with very active components that will actually chase away any pathogens, any heavy thing. It just cleans that whole space so that our life is just developing healthily in that space, in our own living space. And I don't know if you met some very evolved people in your life, but when you do, I did, when you do, you really feel their aura is almost like thick. It's something very protected. They're filled with love, and they really do love you, and you feel the love, but you feel a certain respect for their own living space. And it's very, very strong, very beautiful. It's very harmonious. That's what propolis does. It's that education of our own immune system, our own protection around us. And that's exactly that. And the bees, how they do this, they get their propolis from plants, and then they have a bigger aura, let's say, a bigger propolis envelope. They need that propolis to protect themselves. They have a stronger immune system. So same thing for us. We can share with the bees, and we can reinforce our own immune system. And it's interesting that sharing harmoniously without harming anyone will actually increase the strength of our own aura. There's something to learn from that. It's very, very subtle and beautiful. I love that idea. So this is wonderful. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for your attention and learning about propolis today. There will be, of course, more videos about propolis, actually many of them, because it's one of the most important components of apitherapy. Lots of different applications possible. We'll go into more details later on. Just wanted to let you know a little bit about what it is. So thank you very much for your appreciation. Again, it's a very young YouTube channel. If you like what you're listening, please subscribe, share, like. It's very young. It needs some support somehow to grow. If you like the message, if you want it to be more known around you, you're very welcome to do all you want to support it. And I will, on my side, keep going and keep doing more videos about it, and it will get better and better as time goes. Thank you so much, and see you another time for another apitherapy video.